The mahogany doors of the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. creak open. As morning light filters through towering columns, a convoy of black SUVs pulls up to the curb, their engines cutting to the crisp autumn air. Inside the lead vehicle, Ibrahim Traoré adjusts his traditional Kent cloth draped over his tailored suit, his eyes fixed on the building that will witness history. The weight of 30 million Burkina voices rests on his shoulders as he steps onto American soil. His legal team, a mix of Harvard-trained attorneys and African constitutional scholars, flanks him with briefcases containing evidence that will shake the foundations of power. The morning, joggers and coffee-clutching bureaucrats have no idea they're witnessing the beginning of a political earthquake. Today we file not just a lawsuit, but a declaration of dignity. Traoré speaks quietly to his lead counsel, Amina Diabete, as they ascend the courthouse steps. The $100 million figure isn't just compensation. It represents the systematic exploitation his people have endured while American politicians profited in silence. Security cameras flash as journalists scramble to understand why Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader has traveled 4,000 miles to target Ohio's Senator JD Vance. The courthouse lobby buzzes with whispered speculation, but none can imagine the bombshell about to drop. Traoré's weathered hands, callous from his days as a young soldier, now hold documents that will rewrite political careers. The marble floors echo with footsteps that carry the hopes of an entire continent. Inside the filing office, a bewildered clerk stares at the lawsuits. Opening paragraph. Systematic conspiracy to defraud the sovereign nation of Burkina Faso. The allegations span 3 years of secret communications, backdoor mining deals, and public statements designed to destabilize African leadership. JD Vance's name appears 47 times across 200 pages of evidence, each mention more damaging than the last. Court reporters frantically dial their newsrooms as the scope becomes clear. This isn't just about money. The lawsuit details how Vance's venture capital firm secretly funded opposition groups while publicly calling for African stability. Traoré watches silently as the clerk's hands tremble while stamping the official filing seal. The first phone call reaches Vance's office at 11:47 a.m., interrupting a routine meeting about agricultural subsidies. His chief of staff's face drains of color as he reads the breaking news alert flashing across his phone. "Sir, we have a problem," echoes through the senator's mahogany paneled office as staffers huddle around computer screens. Meanwhile, back at the courthouse, Traoré emerges into the blinding flash of camera lights, his voice steady and clear. "The truth has been filed," he declares, his words carrying the weight of ancestral justice across the Atlantic. The lawsuit that will end a political career has officially begun its journey through American courts. The recording begins with a familiar clink of whiskey glasses and the low murmur of expensive cologne mixing with cigar smoke. It's March 15th, 2023. Inside the private dining room of the Capitol Hill Club, where Washington's elite gather after dark, JD Vance's voice cuts through the ambient noise, relaxed and unguarded after his third bourbon. These African strong men are all the same. He laughs, unaware that his dinner companion wears a wire. The digital recorder captures every syllable as Vance continues his tirade against leaders like Traoré. His words drip with condescension as he discusses managing these primitive governments for American corporate interests. Ibrahim thinks he's some revolutionary hero, but he's just another third-world dictator waiting to be bought. Vance's voice echoes through the high-end audio equipment. The recording reveals his intimate knowledge of classified State Department briefings about Burkina Faso's mineral wealth. His dining companion, later identified as mining executive Robertson, eggs him on with questions about neutralizing the African problem. Vance's response is chilling. "We got dirt on every one of these so-called freedom fighters." The conversation shifts to specific strategies for undermining Traoré's government through targeted disinformation campaigns. Each word becomes ammunition in the lawsuit that will destroy his career. The technical quality of the recording is pristine, captured by military-grade surveillance equipment that picks up every racist undertone. Vance describes African leaders as children playing with adult weapons while outlining plans to funnel money to opposition groups. His laughter becomes more sinister as he details how American mining companies will civilize these backwards nations through economic pressure. The recording reveals Vance's personal involvement in coordinating with foreign corporations to destabilize legitimate African governments. His casual use of racial slurs makes even his wealthy dinner companions uncomfortable. The audio file runs for 47 minutes of unfiltered political poison. When Traoré's legal team first heard the recording in their Wagadougou offices, the room fell silent except for the humming air conditioner. The evidence had been delivered by a whistleblower whose conscience finally overcame their corporate loyalty. African legal scholars worked through the night translating key passages and preparing transcripts that would shock the international community. The recording doesn't just expose Vance's racism. It reveals systematic American interference in African sovereignty. As dawn broke over Burkina Faso, they knew this audio would end more than just one politician's career. The secret recording becomes a smoking gun that validates 3 centuries of African suspicions about Western duplicity. The paper trail begins in a glass tower in Columbus, Ohio, where Vance's venture, capital firm Nere Capital, occupies the entire 32nd floor. Financial documents reveal a web of shell companies with innocuous names like West Africa Development LLC and Sahel Mining Solutions. Each entity traces back to Vance's personal investment portfolio, hidden behind layers of corporate structures designed to obscure ownership. The connection to Burkina Faso's gold mines becomes clear through bank transfers totaling $47 million over 18 months. Vance's signature appears on contracts authorizing equipment, shipments to mining operations that Traoré's government never approved. The corporate maze was designed to extract wealth while maintaining plausible deniability for the senator's political career. Board meeting minutes from Golden Sahara Mining Corporation reveal Vance's active participation in strategic planning sessions. His voice dominates discussions about removing political obstacles to profitable extraction operations in West Africa. The minutes show Vance personally recommending military contractors to provide security for mining sites threatened by local resistance. His financial stake in the company exceeds $12 million, making him the 3rd largest investor in Burkina Faso's mineral exploitation. Email exchanges show Vance coordinating with State Department officials to pressure Traoré's government into accepting unfavorable mining contracts. The corporate connection transformed from hidden investment to active conspiracy against African sovereignty. Swiss banking records expose the true scope of Vance's financial empire built on African resources. Monthly deposits from mining subsidiaries flow into numbered accounts that fund his political campaigns and personal luxury purchases. The money trail reveals how profits from Burkina Faso's gold directly finance Vance's Senate race and family estate in Ohio. Forensic accountants discover that Vance's mining investments generated 340% returns while local communities received less than 2% in compensation. The corporate structure allowed American politicians to profit from African poverty while publicly advocating for development aid. Each bank statement becomes evidence of systematic wealth extraction disguised as legitimate business. The smoking gun arrives in a leaked internal memo from Vance to Golden Sahara CEO dated just weeks before Traoré's rise to power. The document outlines plans to neutralize emerging nationalist leadership through economic pressure and political manipulation. Vance's handwritten notes in the margins reveal his personal involvement in orchestrating opposition to African leaders who threaten corporate interests. The memo specifically mentions Traoré as a priority target requiring immediate intervention to protect American investments. His signature authorizes funding for destabilization campaigns that would later cost thousands of African lives. The corporate connection becomes a foundation for criminal charges that extend far beyond civil. Lawsuits. Madou Wedraough sits beneath the ancient baobab tree where his grandfather once held court, his weathered hands tracing patterns in the red dust. At 78 years old, his memory remains sharp as the morning sun over Sahel, especially when recounting the day foreign men came to his village. The old man's eyes narrow as he recalls the white SUVs that arrived without warning in September 2022, carrying men in expensive suits who spoke broken French. His village of Gurum Garum had never seen such wealth, yet these visitors brought only promises. That turned to poison. The elder's testimony will travel 4,000 m to become the human face of corporate greed in an American courtroom. His words carry the weight of ancestral truth that no lawyer can challenge. They promised schools and hospitals, but only brought machines that swallowed our sacred land. Wagadougou tells the documentary crew, recording his testimony for the lawsuit. The visitors had shown official papers, bearing JD Vance's corporate seal authorizing mining operations at Wood, displaced 2,000 families from ancestral homes. The elder describes how the Americans distributed cash to village chiefs while surveying gold deposits that belonged to his people for generations. Children gathered around the strangers, unaware they were witnessing the theft of their future. Inheritance. The old man's voice breaks as he recounts families forced to abandon burial grounds containing 5 centuries of ancestors. His testimony transforms legal documents into human suffering that demands justice. The corporate representatives had promised Wagadougou's village 15% of mining profits in exchange for land rights that spanned 40 kilometers. Instead, bulldozers arrived at dawn, crushing homes while families slept and destroying crops that fed entire communities. The elder shows scars on his arms from trying to protect his granddaughter as security forces dispersed villagers with tear gas and batons. International mining laws require community consent, but Vance's companies forged signatures and fabricated tribal council meetings that never occurred. The elders detailed. Memory provides exact dates, names, and locations that corporate lawyers claimed were fictional. His testimony exposes how American politicians profit from African suffering while maintaining plausible deniability. When Traoré investigators first interviewed Wagadougou, the old man pulled out a plastic bag containing business cards and contracts left behind by the corporate raiders. Among the papers was Vance's personal business card with a handwritten note promising mutual prosperity that never materialized. The elder had kept every document, sensing their importance, even when his village lacked electricity or running water. His testimony will be broadcast live from Burkina Faso to American courtrooms, forcing senators to confront the human cost of their greed. The village elder's memory becomes a moral foundation that transforms a civil lawsuit into a reckoning with centuries of exploitation. His truth speaks louder than any political spin or corporate denial. The first emergency meeting convenes at 6:30 a.m. in Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's private office, where coffee grows cold as phones ring. Incessantly, Republican leadership huddles around a mahogany conference table, their faces pale as they digest the lawsuit's implications for the entire party. JD Vance's closest allies begin the delicate dance of political distancing, each calculating how far to retreat without appearing disloyal. Senator Marco Rubio cancels his joint press conference with Vance, citing scheduling conflicts that materialize overnight. The party's carefully crafted African policy narrative crumbles as reporters demand explanations for Vance's corporate entanglements. By 8 a.m., 3 major donors have already withdrawn financial support, sensing the political tsunami approaching. Behind closed doors, Vance's chief of staff, Sarah Mitchell, frantically shreds documents while fielding calls from panic campaign contributors. The senator's schedule clears as speaking engagements disappear faster than his approval ratings, leaving him isolated in his Capitol Hill office. Republican National Committee chairwoman cancels her planned endorsement of Vance's presidential exploratory committee Her statement citing evolving circumstances. Former allies who once praised his business acumen now claim they barely know him. Their amnesia spreading like wildfire through congressional corridors. The Ohio Republican Party begins preparing contingency plans for Vance's potential resignation quietly, reaching out to replacement candidates. Political operatives whisper about controlled demolition strategies to contain damage to the broader conservative movement. The leaked audio recording triggers a cascade of abandoned friendships as senators scramble to review their own African investments. 3 sitting Republicans hire crisis management firms within hours, terrified that their own mining stocks might surface in future investigations. The Senate Ethics Committee announces an emergency investigation, while Democratic leadership demands Vance's immediate resignation from all foreign relations committees. Corporate donors who finance Vance's rise now treat him like radioactive waste. They're lobbyists, instructed to avoid all contact with his office. The National Security Council reviews Vance's access to classified information, particularly regarding African military cooperation and mineral resource intelligence. His political isolation becomes complete as former mentors refuse to return phone calls. By noon, Vance sits alone in his office, watching cable news anchors dissect his career like vultures over carrion. His wife's tearful phone call from Ohio reveals death threats targeting their family as international outrage grows exponentially. The senator's hands shake as he reviews resignation letters drafted by 3 different law firms, each version more desperate than the last. Outside his office window, protesters gather with signs reading justice for Burkina Faso and American politicians, African thieves. The man who once dreamed of presidential power now contemplates political suicide as the only escape route. The Washington panic becomes a feeding frenzy that will consume everything he built over 2 decades of ruthless ambition. BBC World Service breaks the story at 2:47 p.m. London time. Their correspondent's voice cutting through static from Wagadougou's bustling streets. Within minutes, Al Jazeera's Doha newsroom mobilizes their African bureau chiefs, recognizing the seismic implications of an African leader suing an American senator. France 24's editors scramble to translate court documents while their cameras capture jubilant crowds gathering in Burkina Faso's capital. The story spreads like wildfire across social media platforms, with drawers Vance trending in 12 languages before sunset. CNN International interrupts regular programming as anchors struggle to pronounce Wagadougou while explaining the lawsuit's global significance. The narrative transforms from obscure legal filing to international diplomatic crisis in less than 6 hours. South African newspapers lead with headlines screaming African David slays American. Gulf as editors recognize the symbolic power of Traoré's bold move. Nigerian television stations broadcast live from university campuses where students celebrate what they see as long overdue justice against Western exploitation. Ghana State Radio dedicates entire programs to analyzing how the lawsuit might reshape Africa's relationship with American corporations. The African Union's headquarters in Addis Ababa buzzes with activity as diplomats field calls from international media seeking official statements. Kenyan social media influencers share video testimonials supporting Traoré's courage in challenging American political elites. The continental response transforms individual grievance into Pan-African solidarity that crosses traditional political boundaries. European news channels struggle to balance their coverage between American political scandal and African sovereignty, assertions that challenge colonial legacies. German public television explores connections between Vance's mining investments and their own country's problematic African resource extraction. History. The Guardian's investigative team deploys reporters to Ohio and Burkina Faso simultaneously, recognizing the story's potential to expose systemic corruption. Russian media gleefully amplifies the scandal as evidence of American hypocrisy in international relations and human rights advocacy. Chinese state television frames the lawsuit as validation of their own non-inference approach to African development partnerships. The global Coverage creates a media ecosystem where American political corruption becomes the lens for examining centuries of Western exploitation. By midnight GMT, the story dominates front pages from Lagos to London, each outlet adding local context that expands a narrative's reach. Japanese news. Services examine how the lawsuit might affect American credibility in international trade negotiations and diplomatic relations. Australian Aboriginal rights activists draw parallels between African mineral exploitation and their own struggles against corporate colonialism. The story transcends traditional news cycles as indigenous rights groups worldwide recognize Traoré's lawsuit as their fight against systematic dispossession. International legal scholars appear on talk shows explaining how the case might establish precedents for holding Western politicians accountable for African resource theft. The global media storm transforms a single lawsuit into a worldwide conversation about justice, sovereignty, and the true cost of American prosperity. The first document. Dump arrives at 3:17 a.m. via encrypted servers, forcing newsroom editors across 3 continents to work through the night. Investigative journalists at the Washington Post receive 847 pages of internal communications between Vance's office and mining executives, each email more damaging than the last. The leaked files reveal systematic coordination between American senators and foreign corporations to destabilize African governments that threaten profit margins. Banking records show direct payments from mining companies to Vance's campaign funds disguised as consulting fees and advisory services. Swiss account numbers linked directly to extraction operations in Burkina Faso's Goldry regions, creating an undeniable paper trail of corruption. The evidence transformed speculation into irrefutable proof of criminal conspiracy spanning 3 years of systematic theft. Court filings reveal intercepted phone conversations where Vance discusses regime change strategies with CIA, connected military contractors operating in West Africa. The transcripts show his personal involvement in planning destabilization campaigns designed to weaken Traoré's government and create chaos favorable to mining interests. Audio evidence captures Vance authorizing payments to opposition groups while coordinating media campaigns to portray African leaders as dictators. His voice resonates through hidden recordings as he describes African sovereignty as an obstacle to civilized development. The conversations expose how American politicians view African nations as resource extraction zones rather than sovereign states deserving respect. Each transcript becomes another nail in the coffin of his political career and personal freedom. Financial forensics reveal a complex web of shell companies designed to hide Vance's ownership stake in Burkina Faso's mineral wealth. The money trail shows profits from African gold, directly funding his Ohio estate, children's private school tuition, and luxury vacations to European resorts. Bank transfers coincide precisely with his public statements supporting African development aid while privately organizing resource extraction that impoverished local communities. The evidence includes photographs of Vance touring mining facilities that his companies operated without government permission or environmental oversight. His personal signature appears on contracts authorizing equipment shipments that displaced thousands of families from ancestral lands. The financial records prove beyond doubt that American political power serves corporate greed at Africa's expense. The smoking gun emerges in a handwritten letter from Vance to Golden Sahara Mining's board of directors dated just weeks before Traoré's rise to power. His personal stationery bears instructions to neutralize emerging African nationalist movements through coordinated economic warfare and political manipulation. The letter specifically names Traoré as a priority target requiring immediate intervention to protect American corporate interests in West African mineral extraction. Forensic analysis confirms the handwriting matches Vance's other personal correspondence, eliminating any possibility of forgery or misattribution. The document represents premeditated conspiracy to undermine African sovereignty for personal financial gain, transforming civil lawsuit into potential criminal prosecution. The evidence unveiled creates an insurmountable mountain of proof that will bury his career forever. The press Conference begins at 2 p.m. in the Hart Senate office building, where Vance's trembling hands grip the podium as cameras flash mercilessly. His voice cracks during the opening statement, claiming the lawsuit represents foreign interference in American democracy. While sweat beads form on his forehead, the senator's prepared remarks fall apart when reporters begin shouting questions about the secret recording and his mining investments in Burkina Faso. His press secretary tries to end the conference after 12 minutes, but Vance waves her away, determined to salvage his crumbling reputation. The Ohio senator's eyes dart nervously as he searches for words that might explain away 3 years of documented corruption. His desperation becomes palpable as he realizes that no amount of political spin can overcome the mountain of evidence. I have never and would never participate in any scheme to exploit African resources or undermine legitimate governments, Vance declares, his voice rising to near shouting levels. The lie hangs in the air like toxic smoke as reporters wave printed copies of his handwritten letter authorizing destabilization campaigns. His face reens as CNN's correspondent reads directly from the secret, recording his own voice echoing through the room, describing African leaders as children playing with adult weapons. The senator's legal team exchanges panicked glances as their client continues digging his political grave with every defensive statement. His attempt to portray himself as a victim of foreign manipulation backfires spectacularly when journalists present bank records showing millions in personal profits from Burkina Faso's gold mines. The press conference becomes a public execution broadcast live to millions of viewers worldwide. The breaking point arrives when a reporter asks about the displaced families in Gambaram village, causing Vance to explode in frustrated rage. I don't know anything about some African village, he shouts, his carefully constructed political persona crumbling before national television cameras. The outburst reveals his true character as he dismisses African suffering while defending his right to profit from their resources. His staff rushes to the podium as he continues ranting about foreign propaganda and African dictators trying to destroy American success. The senator's mask slips completely, exposing the racist contempt that drove his criminal conspiracy against Burkina Faso sovereignty. Security personnel escort him from the room as reporters shout questions about his resignation and potential criminal charges. Within hours, the press conference footage goes viral across the social media platforms, generating millions of views and universal condemnation. Political analysts describe performance as career suicide, while Democratic leaders call for immediate ethics investigations and criminal referrals. The Ohio Republican Party issues a terse statement distancing themselves from their senator's unfortunate comments and apparent business entanglements. Vance's poll numbers collapse to single digits as constituents flood his offices with demands for resignation and apologies to the African people. His attempt at damage control instead becomes a defining moment that transforms him from powerful politician to international pariah. The breaking point arrives not through external pressure, but through his own inability to contain the corruption that defined his career. The African Union's emergency session convenes in Addis Abeba's gleaming conference center, where 54 flags flutter in solidarity behind President Traoré's podium. Heads of state arrive via charter flights from across the continent, their unified presence transforming individual grievance into collective action against centuries of exploitation. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa opens the session by declaring Traoré's lawsuit a watershed moment in Africa's fight for economic sovereignty and dignity. The assembly erupts in thunderous applause as delegates recognize this as Africa's chance to finally hold Western politicians accountable for systematic resource theft. Nigeria's President Tinubu announces his country's $50 million contribution to Traoré's Legal Defense Fund, calling it an investment in African liberation. The continental response transforms a single lawsuit into a Pan-African movement that crosses traditional political and linguistic boundaries. Ghana's President Akufo-Addo takes the podium to announce the formation of the African Sovereignty Legal Defense Coalition, uniting the continent's top legal minds in support of Traoré's case. Kenyan lawyers volunteer their services pro bono while Ethiopian law schools organize student brigades to research similar cases of American political corruption across Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo's delegation presents evidence of their own mining exploitation by companies connected to Vance's investment portfolio. Senegal's foreign minister announces diplomatic sanctions against American corporations involved in unauthorized African mineral extraction, sending shockwaves through Washington's business community. The coordinated response demonstrates Africa's growing confidence in challenging Western economic colonialism through international legal systems. Each nation's commitment strengthens a lawsuit while exposing the continental scope of American corporate crimes. Street celebrations erupt from Cape Town to Cairo as ordinary Africans see Traoré's courage reflected in their own dreams of true independence from Western exploitation. University students in Lagos organize solidarity marches while traditional chiefs in rural Mali hold ceremonies, blessing Traoré's legal battle against foreign oppression. Social media campaigns spread across the continent, with Zoo Africa united against theft, generating millions of posts in dozens of languages and dialects. The continental response reveals deep-seated anger about resource extraction that enriches American politicians, while African communities remain impoverished. Despite their mineral wealth, religious leaders from multiple faiths declare special prayers for Traoré's success, framing the lawsuit as divine justice against centuries of systematic theft. The grassroots support creates momentum that transforms legal proceedings into a spiritual reckoning with colonial legacies. The Organization of African Unity issues its strongest statement in decades, declaring Vance's actions crimes against African humanity deserving international prosecution and punishment. Tanzania's President Hassan announces her country will seek similar legal action against Western politicians who profited from unauthorized mining operations within their borders. The Arab Maghreb Union pledges diplomatic support while threatening to review all American trade agreements that failed to respect African sovereignty. Morocco's King Mohammed V offers to host an international tribunal examining systematic Western exploitation of African resources across multiple decades. The unified response transforms Traoré from individual plaintiff into continental champion, his lawsuit becoming the catalyst for Africa's long-overdue confrontation with economic colonialism. The African Unity response creates unstoppable momentum that will reshape the continent's relationship with Western powers forever. The final blow arrives at 6:47 a.m. through a New York Times breaking news alert that reaches 40 million subscribers simultaneously. Federal prosecutors announce criminal charges against JD Vance for conspiracy, money laundering, and violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act spanning 3 years. The indictment details the systematic exploitation of Burkina Faso's mineral resources while serving as a United States senator sworn to uphold international law. His mugshot appears on front pages worldwide as FBI agents escort him from his Georgetown home in handcuffs, his political career ending in humiliation. The criminal charges carry a potential 25-year prison sentence, transforming him from presidential hopeful to federal defendant facing life behind bars. The man who once dreamed of commanding America's military now faces the prospect of dying in a federal penitentiary. The Senate Ethics Committee votes unanimously to recommend Vance's immediate expulsion, citing conduct unbecoming a United States senator and betrayal of public trust. Republican leadership abandons their former rising stars. Polling shows the scandal threatens to sink the entire party in upcoming elections nationwide. The Ohio governor announces plans to appoint Vance's replacement within 48 hours, erasing his political existence with bureaucratic efficiency that mirrors his disposability. Harvard Law School revokes his invitation to deliver the commencement address, while his alma mater removes his portrait from the Alumni Hall. Book publishers cancel his memoir deal as literary agents flee his representation. Like rats abandoning a sinking ship, the institutional rejection becomes complete. as every organization that once celebrated his success now treats him as toxic waste. International arrest warrants emerge in The Hague as prosecutors examine whether his actions constitute crimes against humanity under international law. The International Criminal Court opens preliminary investigations into systematic resource extraction that displaced thousands of African families from ancestral lands. Burkina Faso's government announces plans to seize all assets connected to Vance's mining operations, redistributing stolen wealth to communities he impoverished. Swiss authorities freeze his overseas accounts, while Interpol issues red notices restricting his international travel to prevent flight from justice. The global legal net tightens around him as multiple jurisdictions compete to prosecute the American senator who thought himself above international law. His passport becomes worthless as every nation except his homeland considers him a wanted criminal. The career that began with promises of American greatness ends in a federal courthouse where Vance pleads not guilty to charges that would define his legacy. His wife files for divorce while his children change their surnames to escape association with his. Crimes against African people. The fortune built on stolen gold evaporates through legal fees and asset seizures, leaving him financially ruined and professionally destroyed. His political obituaries write themselves as historians examine how American exceptionalism enables systematic exploitation of African resources through corrupt politicians. The senator, who once commanded standing ovations, now sits alone in his cell contemplating how greed transformed him from public servant into international criminal. The career collapse becomes complete as JD Vance disappears into federal prison system, his name synonymous with the corruption that defined American foreign policy in Africa. Ibrahim Traoré's $100 million lawsuit didn't just destroy JD Vance's career. It exposed how American politicians systematically exploit Africa while preaching democracy. This landmark case proves that African leaders can hold Western corruption accountable through international law. What's your take on this historic confrontation? Subscribe for more untold stories and share your thoughts below.